Hello, so this is an offence about a young 18-year-old, and he was quite actually immature, 18-year-old, quite immature for his age, but he was only 18. And at the time he committed the offence, he'd been living in this hostel for the homeless. Now, really, hostel is basically a night shelter where the street homeless have to queue up each night to get a place in this hostel, and it involved sleeping in one great big dormitory. So at the time of the offence, he was sleeping there. He had no previous convictions. And when he was produced at magistrates' court, the magistrates thought it was so serious, this offence, that they had to remand him, send him up to Crown Court. In other words, they were saying that they felt so serious that they didn't have sufficient sentencing powers to send him away to prison for long enough for such an offence. So what was the offence, you wonder? Well, I'm going to tell you. It was for making 3 hoax calls. One was to the police to say that he'd observed somebody committing a burglary in progress. The next one was to the fire brigade to say that he'd seen somebody set a garden shed on fire. And the third, a most serious hoax call, was to say that a bomb had been planted in a specific place, and this resulted in the bomb squad being called out. So in each case, the fire brigade had to go out to that hoax call, and the police went out to the other one. So there we are, sent up to Crown Court, 18 and no previous convictions. So what was he doing in this hostel for the homeless? Well, his dad had placed him there. Dad was in a new relationship, and he just had a baby with his new partner. And the young man, I should call him Brian, didn't get on particularly well with her. And his dad decided that he would place him in this hostel in the hope they felt that the local authorities should house him. And, that it wasn't their responsibility anymore at 18, and that if they placed him in this hostel for the homeless, the local authorities should house him. But he wasn't housed, and there were no spaces. So there we are. So the offence occurred at about Christmas time. You know that funny period between Boxing Day and New Year, and you forget what day of the week it is? Well, he committed it in one of those days during that period. But in fact, I say days, he actually couldn't sleep at night in this big dormitory. He got up and had been drinking, and he was quite drunk, and he was depressed. And he committed the offence. He made these hoax calls at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was back in the 1990s, so he had one of these rather basic mobile phones that we had back then. So just a bit more background information about him is talking about his childhood. Some of his earliest memories were of his parents arguing. His parents eventually split when he was 10 years old, and his 2 sisters went to live with his mum, and he went to live with Dad, although Dad did move around quite a lot, which meant that Dad would park him to live with grandmother on occasion. He had a lot of problems going on at school, the young Brian. He said that he'd been suspended from school on at least 10 occasions, and age 14 he was moved from mainstream school to a special unit, where he got on quite well actually. On leaving school, his dad pulled strings, and with a company he worked for, and managed to get him a job with a firm of builders that he worked with. But he didn't work on the same building site as his dad. He used to have to make his own way to work. But he settled in quite well, and obviously was quite reliable. And what was he, 16, 17, that kind of age. He managed to save up to get himself a little moped. So there he was at the homeless hostel, and he was going to work on his little moped every day. Sadly, he had an accident on the way to work one day, a serious one. He was knocked over by a lorry, and both his legs were broken. He was in hospital for a while. He spent a short time rehabilitating around his grandmother's, but he was then, returned to the homeless hostel, queuing up for a space. His dad took him, and he went back to the homeless hostel, but he wasn't fit to work. And one of the rules was at the homeless hostel was that you need to go out every day. So there he was, walking around every day in pain. And I guess he felt quite lonely, really. And on Christmas Day, he spent half a day with his mum and half a day with his dad. Boxing Day returned, but sorry, son, you got to be wandering around on your own during the day on Boxing Day. And I feel his offence was a cry for help, really. And he had nobody to talk to. And that's why he committed the offence. Not long before he turned up to Crown Court, I discovered that he'd received a caution for arson, which really worried me, and I had no details of it. Now, when you prepare a court report, you're given a pack from the prosecution, but it was poor, and it had hardly any information in it at all, and I had to phone around. I spoke to his grandmother to get a lot of information, and to corroborate what was going on and things like that. And it's a shame, and I had no details for his schooling. I had to find those sort of things out. And time's limited, you see. So anyway, what I was really worried, I don't know what this arson offence was about, because often arson is committed by somebody who's disturbed, or they got psychological problems, or it could be an indicator of it's a serious offence, actually. People capable of committing arson could be quite dangerous. But it may have been, I don't know, he may have just set fire to a waste paper basket or something, but even so, it is worrying. So I recommend that the judge order a psychological report to look into the arson and into his behaviour. I recommended that a probation order be made, which they did, and the sort of thing that we did was because I felt it was very immature, I tried to investigate the possibility of him going to live with mum and his two sisters, if possible. We also organised some alcohol education, and to make sure that he didn't become addicted to alcohol. He wasn't addicted, but what was worrying was he'd used alcohol as a prop to deal with his depression. So we gave him sort of alcohol education to make sure he controlled the use of his alcohol in future. I put him in contact with a housing champion to try and help him get better accommodation. Probation service doesn't have much accommodation at all. Normally it's only for very, very serious offenders coming out of prison. But we do work with various hostels that are supportive. So we looked into that with a housing champion. And we also looked at helping him get back to work and get fit again, and general support. And the other thing that I did is quite unusual, but I call it a bespoke thing, and it's the sort of thing that I used to do from time to time, was I got him to meet with the emergency services. I had good contacts with the fire brigade, and to put over their perspective of him doing hoax calls, and that the danger it can cause and what a nuisance it could be. So I did two things. One, I had him visit the call centre where 999 calls are made, and it enabled him to apologise to him, and I think that's good. And he understood his offence from their perspective, and also arranged for him to visit the fire brigade, and they gave him quite a chat and explained their role and what sort of things that they do and the problem caused by his call. And again, it enabled him to apologise. So that's it in a nutshell. This was quite some time ago, back in the 1990s, but many people at face value, when you hear this offence, you kind of go, oh, he should go to jail. But when you actually hear the facts and his background, it gives you a different perspective, because when you think, how would this immature 18-year-old cope in jail? Not too well, I think. And this was really an emotional offence. He was depressed. The guy needed support. And really, he needed a family, really. So that's why, I looked at renewing contact with mum and his sisters, because I felt that possibly was the best avenue for him, and to get that going, even if they supported him a bit more from afar. But I thought it was really harsh to place him in a hostel for the homeless, aged only 18, and for him to be considered for quite a serious custodial sentence by the magistrates. Anyway, do write in with your thoughts. So that's a little Christmas time account of an offence that occurred over Christmas time. I've written a fictional story. It's called New Year Resolution. So if you want something seasonal and read about a New Year story, I've actually it's based on a true story, but it's a fictional story based in France, because I'm half French and I've lived part of my life in France. But I'll put a link to it. Do have a listen to this story. It's a good one, and I think I wrote it quite well, about a New Year resolution. Anyway, all the very best, and I wish you a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. All the best now. Bye-bye.